All right, let's dive into the U.S. housing market. If you've been trying to keep up, you know the headlines are all over the place. We're going to sort through the noise and figure out what the data is really telling us.
So, what's the deal? Is the market heating up or is it cooling down? Honestly, it depends on what you read. But the truth, as we're about to see, is way more complicated than a simple up or down.
Okay, so let's start with the good news. For a little while there, it really looked like the market was shaking off its slump and picking up some serious steam.
After a pretty sluggish January, things suddenly popped. Home sales actually grew by 1.7% in February. Now, I know that might not sound like a huge number, but believe me, it was a big deal. A total reversal of the trend we'd been seeing.
And to put that percentage into real-world numbers, we're talking about an annual rate of 4.09 million existing homes sold. So this wasn't just a tiny blip, it was a genuine burst of activity. But what caused it?
Well, it pretty much all came down to this one little window of opportunity. For a very short time, mortgage rates dropped just enough to make borrowing a little cheaper, and a whole bunch of buyers who'd been waiting on the sidelines just went for it.
And this really shows you just how incredibly sensitive the market is to mortgage rates right now. The moment rates dipped below that psychological 6% mark, for the first time since 2022, by the way, people jumped. It proved there's this huge pent-up demand just waiting for a sliver of affordability.
But of course, that's only half the picture. That glimmer of hope we just talked about, it ran smack into some pretty powerful headwinds that are still causing problems today.
And yep, just as quickly as it opened, that window slammed shut. Rates did not stay below 6% for long. They've already climbed back up, which basically put the brakes on all that enthusiasm we saw and reminded everybody that, volatility is still the name of the game.
And on top of those rising rates, you have the other monster hurdle, the price tag. The national median price for an existing home, it's now sitting at $398,000. That number is really at the core of the affordability crisis we keep talking about.
You'd think with higher mortgage rates, prices would start to come down. But nope, nationally, they're still up a bit compared to last year. And that combination, high prices plus high rates, is creating a massive squeeze on anyone trying to get into the market.
Okay, so let's peel back another layer here, because the national numbers don't even begin to tell the whole story. Things start to look very different when you break it down by inventory and by, well, where you live.
So check this out. Here's another piece of what should be good news for buyers. There are actually more homes for sale. Inventory was up 2.4% from January, and even better, it's up almost 5% from a year ago. More choice is a good thing, right? Well, that growing supply is having a real effect, but only in certain places. In the South and the West, where we've seen the biggest inventory growth, home prices are actually starting to come down. It's a classic supply and demand story, but it's just not happening everywhere.
But here's the kicker. Even with more homes on the market, they aren't exactly flying off the shelves. The average home in February sat on the market for 47 days. That's 5 days longer than it took a year ago, which tells us that even with more options, buyers are still really hesitant or just can't make the numbers work.
Okay, so we've got positive signs, we've got negative pressures, we've got regional splits. Let's pull all these threads together and try to make sense of what this messy picture actually means for you.
It really all boils down to this. The market is in a standoff. On one hand, you've got rising inventory, which should give buyers more power, and cool prices down. But on the other hand, you have stubbornly high prices and those volatile mortgage rates just crushing affordability.
And that leaves us with this big central question. The market finally has more supply, which is something we've needed for years. But if fewer and fewer people can actually afford to buy those homes, does it even matter? It's a tough paradox, and it's one that's probably going to define the housing market for a long time to come.